Real Men of Real Estate with Steve Matley, construction manager and real estate developer, business owner, and educator.
Did you know that right now there's 22,000 units deficit?
Tunde Ogunwole, real estate development professional, Naval Academy grad, and veteran with a deep understanding of the public sector process.
All of us want to live in thriving communities.
Brian Fox, real estate expert and investor, dedicated to helping hundreds of clients make money in real estate every year.
There's so much housing going in.
The builders are begging for more land.
Future company can come in, lease up space to employ those people who are living in the homes.
We have to put the housing in place.
That either have to have houses,
They want to make sure that there's a strong employment.
logistics centers, things like information hubs. We are a shipping economy now. There's economies all over the country where their prices are doubling and tripling. Welcome back, everybody, to the Real Men of Real Estate, where we are joined by my co-hosts, as always, Stephen Matley and Tunde Ogunwole, where today we are finishing up a three-part series on the ABCs of commercial real estate. We left off last time with Tunde explaining some of the development processes for commercial, but today we're going to wrap it up, and Tunde's going to take us through a few more steps of how this works. We have some questions and answers, and hopefully give you some great insight on what you can use moving forward in the business of commercial real estate. Without further ado, I welcome Steve and Tunde. Guys, welcome.
It's good to be back.
Hey, Brian, good to see you.
Very good. Tunde, I don't recall where we left off exactly and where you want to pick up, but if you want, we'd love to take you through step 3.
One of the things that we've always talked about on the Real Men of Real Estate is how we're excited about what's happening. And specifically, I wanted to really get into the different roles in deals in commercial real estate. One of the products that I work on the most are the industrial buildings. A lot of the industrial buildings are considered big box or in urban infill areas. They're smaller facilities. But in big box industrial or smaller facilities, there are a couple of roles that you tend to see, and they kind of fit this ABC format. Architects. Everybody knows that you need to have an architect and an initial design to get going. As a developer, you're looking at these back of the envelope estimations of a development site, and you're really looking at the architect's design expertise on whether or not you can make the project viable from a financial standpoint, and then understand what any of the building code requirements are or any of the local land use requirements are on the early stages of design. And for people who are watching this show and are trying to figure out how to get in and they've got somewhat of a design background, we wanted to show a little bit of where most architects go. So let me share a screen and kind of talk through this a little bit. So if you're in commercial real estate and you're thinking about being an architect, you typically find yourself going to AIA, Architects Institute of America. And you can see here on their website, they've got a lot of resources that show different programs and recognition that they have for architects in the field. If people are looking to try to understand some of the licensure requirements or where they can get courses, continuing ed for those people who maybe had a design background and are refreshing their licenses. Advocacy. Architects tend to have more of a passion for their community. They see that they're creating the built environment to respond to their community. And so they tend to have take certain platforms and liberties. I know, Steve, you often work in land development, and I'm sure that you probably talk to architects, not only in land development, but you're probably talking to them in some of the work that you do. Do you want to touch on the role of the architect or anything?
Sure. Yeah, with the land development, we don't work with architects too much, more civils and planners. But, I have a long history as a construction manager where architects are the lead designer. Interesting, land and civils tend to be the lead designer. In vertical construction, the architects are. And when you say architect, the architect is, in fact, the master designer in charge of everything, but there's an entire team. We know that contractors have a whole team under them of different trades, but we don't always know that architects have an entire team of consultants under them. So you've got land planners, you've got structural engineers, civil engineers, landscape, mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineers, you've got code experts, material selection, interior design, all these things that the architect is coordinating with all these different disciplines. And these days, those disciplines could be spread across the country or the globe, working on a project that's local. And the architect's job is to make sure that that building not only fits the owner's requirements functionally and aesthetically, but also that it fits the local jurisdiction's requirements, because you can build the same big box in 4 different cities and have very different requirements because of climate and architectural design in the area and flood issues and whatever else goes on. So the architect has a very big job, and they are the visionaries. They are the ones that come up and with the idea of how we're going to solve the owner's problem by putting the specific facility on this piece of real estate.
Fantastic. All right, so that's the A, the architect. And then the next one here, for commercial real estate, specialty development, you're looking for a lender. Typically, you're looking for a lender in the construction process. And it's a necessary evil at times, but you do need to work with your bankers. You've got to figure out what the financing is going to look like, whether it's short-term financing on a construction loan, which may last 18, 24 months, maybe 34 months on big box industrial, and it might be a more complicated site. And on smaller projects where you're doing rehab, the lending requirements might be less than that. But anybody watching the show who's interested in maybe kind of coming in, not with the design background, but looking more at a finance background, you know, the ABA tends to be an organization that you tend to find most of the bankers. I know, Brian, you probably talk to residential clients about getting financing for buying their home. Is there anything you wanted to maybe talk about as it relates to lenders and financing?
Well, depending on how it's structured on the commercial side, on the residential side, typically what happens is you can use construction financing to, one, buy the project, buy the dirt that you're going to build on, and then fund the construction. Or you can do it in 2 phases. You can buy the dirt and you can fund the construction thereafter and then roll it all into permanent financing. In residential, it's a bit more clean cut. And to be frank, most people shy away from it completely. They will buy something that's already bricks and mortar, something that's already sitting on the dirt, and they're more inclined to renovate that property than they are to do ground up, quite honestly, because people are afraid of it. But to be fair, in this market, it's something that I would urge people to get more comfortable with, because there is going to be a bit more value if you know how to do it in doing some more construction, some more renovation than you might normally do. So that's just my 2 cents. The rates are pretty good. It ends up sitting like a line of credit, a checking account where you're drawing on construction money. You only pay interest on the funds you use as opposed to the whole amount. But I'm not sure if that's the same or similar to what it is in construction.
Well, you touched on a couple of points. I'd say a lot of the deals that I work on, ground up development for industrial, what we do is a 2-stepper that you've talked about. We buy the dirt with equity, and then when we get to a certain point, then we bring in the construction loan. That's what we typically do, at least on the projects I work on. But there are a lot of different models where you could have it blended. So
yeah, and I think people forget, because we think about design and construction, we forget it's a business enterprise. Real estate projects are in fact investment vehicles, and therefore the finance component of it is huge. It's really the linchpin of it.
And then sticking with the ABCs, brokers. You can't really do a deal unless somebody brings the deal to you, and usually they're professionals. Whether Brian, obviously you represent the residential brokerage side, and on the commercial side, you're looking at a broker who's got a land listing or a tenant rep. But there's a lot of different ways that you can look at a deal, but they're often directly through a broker. And so if somebody's looking at possibly getting into commercial real estate, it's similar in some ways, where you've got an opportunity to jump into a national organization, NAR, and then really spend a little bit more of your time focusing on the industrial product type. If that's an area that you have an interest in, and we see a lot of people who are pure play big box brokers. But this is one way to kind of learn a little bit more about what that path would look like if you're looking at that in commercial. I don't know, Brian, Steve, if you wanted to maybe talk a little bit about brokerage as a business.
Okay, I work with brokers a lot, and it's, you know, getting the right piece of real estate is really the very first step. When you're trying to figure out whatever the owner's issue is and the problem they're trying to solve by going through this process, it starts with the right piece of real estate. And of course, as you know, location, 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 and that can mean different things. In a house, that means a great view of the ocean or, you know, school district. But in commercial, it means, are you close to a rail spur? Are you by a freeway? Do you have access issues? Is it compatible with the neighborhood? Is there going to be traffic flow issues getting trucks in and out? So there's those issues that are different with industrial construction, but just as important. So the brokers usually know the area very well, and they have the pulse by working with the title people, and so local architects are a good source of finding properties too, and civil engineers, they'll know what's kind of available, but you need to have that broker who's the expert in real estate to put this together and make sure you're got your I's dotted and T's crossed in getting the real estate.
And I'll actually add to that. So, what I found is a lot of people fantasize getting deals together by themselves on their own. There's a huge like, hey, I found this. I can mail out to a bunch of neighbors. I can source these deals. But the reality is, the concept that most people don't understand is that there are ongoing, long-term, trusted relationships that happen in and around in every area that you're working with. And most people who come to me after trying to do it on their own for a long time, saying like, I've canvassed areas, nothing's coming up, but it's because I can control a part of the marketplace and I know who those people are. And so go back to brokers, is they do control a fair amount of inventory based on relationships over time.
Yeah, my company does a lot of straight from seller, but that's because I have one of my partners, one of the 3 partners in the company, was a commercial real estate broker for a decade.
There you go.
That's why we can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Sticking with the ABCs, the contractor or the general contractor, that's obviously one of the most important roles for a developer. When we do ground up construction, you need somebody to actually build a building, break ground, grade the ground, grade the soil or the dirt that you're on, and then go vertical. And so I find myself spending, right now, I'm probably spending about 65% of my time talking to general contractor and their subs for projects that were already out of the ground, where we're 2 different projects. One where we're tilting walls and concrete tilt for a 400,000 foot building. And the other one, we're doing tenant improvement. But a lot of the time that I'm spending is reviewing and managing the construction process. And that's being done by the general contractor, who has a tier of subcontractors under them who are building. This is a great way to plug in if somebody's really handy or really feels like they'd like to be out in the field, or they just want to see the construction process. Working or getting your way into the general contractor side is a great way to get involved in commercial real estate. Is there anything, Steve? I know that you're probably somewhat familiar with this.
Oh yeah, this has been my realm for decades. And the interesting thing about construction, if you want to get into this on the white collar side of it, the management side, it's really a 2-headed monster. You have project management, which is administering the project, and that's the budgets, the schedules, contract administration. And then you've got the field side, which is the superintending, and that is coordinating all the subcontractors, deliveries, all the equipment, the tools, everything that goes in and out on the job site. And they work together. They're not really one over the other normally. It's usually, like I say, like a 2-headed monster that runs these things. But what's important to note is there is 20, 30 plus trade contractors under them, and all have also project managers, project coordinators, project engineers, superintendents. So it doesn't have to be general contractors. If you want to get in this field, some of the trade contractors are bigger than a lot of the general contractors, especially the mechanical, electrical, plumbing ones.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because right now in the tenant improvements on one of the projects that we're working on, we've got about 120 people on site.
Yes.
And it shows you that it's a real team sport. You talked about the team element. If somebody as a broker is thinking a 1-person army jumps into the field, they're going to find out that they're not going to last very long, because they don't have a lot of insight in the market, and they got to have somebody who has a little bit more experience.
As you know, I teach at a college that does for the construction management program, and sometimes they have students that complain about group projects. And I said, you know what? You do group projects because when you get in the industry, you're not doing anything by yourself. If you want to work by yourself, take up pottery.
There you go. And so you talked about the construction management certificate, which is a great lead-in, CM, construction manager. So these folks are a little bit different than the general contractors in terms of project management. Steve, maybe you can kind of build on that for people who are really wanting to know a little bit more about the difference between CM and the general contractor.
That's one of those, the semantics of it, because a construction manager could be anybody that manages construction for anybody in the broad sense. But a construction manager as a profession is someone who is an agent. They don't design, engineer, or build a thing. They are the orchestra leader. So you think about this. The orchestra leader doesn't need to know every instrument or play every instrument or know how to even get every instrument. They need to make sure that the specialists and experts that know those instruments are all playing together at the right time. And the only instrument they get is a little stick to wave around, right? And that's kind of what the CM is. The construction manager just coordinates everybody else so it turns into beautiful music and not a lot of chaotic noise.
And if I may, actually, one more thing. So I don't only do deals here in Southern California where we're located, but I will venture and do deals in our states. And not all states have the same designations for the same things. So for instance, we did a couple deals in Birmingham, Alabama. And in Birmingham, Alabama, they have a couple different kinds of licenses. And you can be a certified contractor, and you can be a quote unquote certified home builder. And they're not the same thing, and they carry very different requirements and regulations. And you may be working with someone in whatever state you are. I don't know all of them. I just know the ones I've had to deal with. But you may think you've got some regulations around somebody based on their qualifications and find out, oh, well, it turns out they can do that job, but they don't have the same restrictions as the other license, which is what you hired, and therefore you have different liability.
Yeah, and there's no real license for a construction manager. There are voluntary licenses through the CMAA, through the DBIA, through PMI, different groups. They're voluntary. It's not like architects that have a board that you have to take that test. Civil engineers and structural engineers, you have to take that test and become a registered professional. Construction managers, there's some moves towards that, but that doesn't exist right now. And even general contractors we think of as licensed, but that doesn't mean they're actually competent. That's really not about building anything. It's a consumer affairs issue, state by state. And all it is a way for the state to control taking someone's ability away to do the work if they're cheating people. So
there you go.
Right. So sticking with the ABCs in roles in deals, the last one, but I think it's a really important one, especially for us in vertical construction, is the role of the civil engineer. We find that breaking ground and coming out of the ground, typically the term that we use is coming out of the ground, that we've gone through and identified and explored any subsurface issues and remediated them, been able to establish a positive, strong foundation and go vertical. That's a major success for us. Civil engineers are a significant part of that process. And so if you've got more of an engineering background and you're thinking, hey, how can I get into industrial? Our civil engineers are kind of the lifeblood. I would say that civil engineers and architects have equal weight, and in many ways on the front end of our sites, we spend much more time in with civil engineers on the vertical development side. And I know that, Steve, you probably work a lot more with the civil engineers on the land development side. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the way to differentiate is civil engineers tend to design the horizontal, and architects tend to design the vertical. That's not exclusive all the way around, but that's generally the rule. Here's how I describe what civil engineers do. Their job is to get water to go where it belongs and keep water from going where it doesn't belong. And so all the flood control issues, water supply, sewage, storm drains, so all your parking areas, roof lines, landscape drainage, that's all civil engineers. The streets, the curbs, the gutters. Civil engineers are designing all of that stuff. And a lot of it is around getting water away from where it doesn't belong and keeping water where it does belong, like with your potable water systems and sewage. So they design the horizontal environment upon which the architects design and build the vertical structures.
Well, thanks so much, Brian and Steve. I just thought that this was a wonderful opportunity where we could kind of talk about those roles. Obviously, in commercial real estate, there's a lot of different ways you can get in. We talked about that in the previous episode. There's hotel, there's retail, there's industrial. But these roles are the ABCs. They're kind of the foundational roles that you see in the development process. And I think this is a great way to get people who are interested, maybe looking at a pivot, trying to get into the business. These are a couple different platforms for ways you can get in.
And I encourage people, if they're interested in doing this for a living, there are fantastic engineering, architecture, and construction management, and even business schools if you want the finance and accounting side of this business, which is very important and very lucrative. Those are available all over the place, right? And a lot of them are even available online. So I encourage people to do the research and check it out. It's a really a very rewarding career.
Fantastic. And as always, on the Real Men of Real Estate, we like to open the doors to all possible questions and information that you would like to receive. We do believe in reducing panic and reduced expectations through education information. So if you'd like more information from us, you can tune into our website, realmenofrealestate.com. You can find us on Roku. You can ask questions, you can pose ideas, and we'll be happy to not only review them, but debate them here on the team to find out the real answer to what's going on between this and anything that might be situational as of today in our economy. Once again, my name is Brian Fox, your host for the day, as well as Stephen Matley and Tunde Ogunwole. We wish you a happy sign-off. We welcome you back for the next show, and we talk to you next time. Have a great day.